You're listening to Salford City Radio 94.4 with myself, Jimmy Petruzzi, on the Friday Sports Show. Tonight we're going to bring you a couple of really special guests. We're going to bring you a guest from far afield who's been on the show before, our correspondent who's in the know from across the other side of the world, and also a fascinating guest as well from the UK who has played for a number of different teams, including Wolves as well. He actually played in the last time Wolves played in the League Cup final and they won as well. He's going to give us interesting insight into the world of football too. So we've got some really interesting guests on the show today, and we're going to be covering some fascinating topics as well. Tony Basha, thank you for joining us on the show, buddy. Great to have you back on board.
Pleasure, mate. Always a pleasure to be on your show, mate.
Fantastic. So, I mean, the last time we spoke, we talked about young players being developed, and one of the young players, I believe, is on the way to Spain, to Aravaca CF in Spain, Amir, I believe. Can you tell us a bit about this player? What sort of player is he, and has he made the moves just yet, or is it on the way? Or
yeah, look. Amir actually spent some time in England in an academy. I'm not too sure which one he was, but look, he's a hard-working kid. He's got a fantastic attitude, and he ticks all the right boxes in regards to work ethic, respect, and a player just gets on with his job. That's what the coach asks. And he did sign a 1-year deal there with Aravaca.
Mm-hmm. That's a great move, obviously, for him, and his family must be over the moon for him. I mean, his family must be chuffed. What was his family's reaction when he sort of got the opportunity to go out there?
Look, his family, they do it tough. They work hard. Actually, Amir's got a twin brother who's disabled. So obviously, he's a lucky one between the two. But his family works hard. They're a good family, and they've raised him well, and they're very excited for him.
Yeah, it must be exciting times for him to go out there and develop his game, and who knows where it'll take him. But the hard work starts now, doesn't it? And that's the sort of thing, really. Obviously, he's worked hard to get there, and not taking that away from him. But now he's got the opportunity. He's going to have to go the extra mile. And I think he's quite fortunate, Tony, to have yourself as a mentor, because what you do well for the players we've mentioned before, they don't just leave the academy and that's it. They keep in touch, and we've seen that with the likes of Mitchell Duke, who's been scoring for fun at the Wanderers, the top league in Australia. And how's Mitchell getting on at the moment? Is he sort of settling back in well after his stint in Japan?
Yeah, look, what you touched on was 100% correct, mate. There's a saying that we use, we'll get you in the door, but your character's got to keep you in the room, basically. So I'm pretty sure Amir's doing that. And in regards to Dukey, mate, he's scoring a lot of goals. Since he joined the Wanderers, obviously they were one of the bottom teams. But once he got there, I think they've won 5 games out of 6. So he's doing a fantastic job for him. And mate, he's a great player. And obviously he played in Japan, which is it's the strongest league in Asia. So, there's no secret to his success in Australia.
And what about an international call-up for him, Tony? I mean, the Australian team at the moment, they didn't play any friendlies recently, I believe, for one reason or the other. At the moment, goal scoring seems to be an issue. For me, the obvious choice, and I don't want to tell the manager how to do his job, obviously, but the point being, you got a goal scorer in form, and I always believe in picking players on form, not on reputation, and here you've got a player in form. And is he knocking on the door, you think, of the Australian selection?
Well, Graham Arnold would have to be Stevie Wonder if he doesn't choose him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Mate, he's played at the top league abroad. He's come here, mate. He's playing. Look, all due respect to the Wanderers Football Club, but he's playing with a young midfield. You know what I mean? And he obviously plays that wide. So, but they're doing a good job, the young blokes. But you know yourself, football. If the players behind you haven't got experience, they can't get the ball to you as you'd like. It's difficult, but look, he's playing well and the club's doing well. But for me, if the Socceroos were playing this week, he'll definitely be in the squad. I'm pretty sure Graham Arnold will choose him because he did have a word to him prior to the Asian Cup. He hadn't played many games prior or leading up to it, but I'm pretty sure they'll pick him, mate. He's a fantastic player and he's a fantastic human
Yeah.
Good guy who gives a lot of time to the fans, and he's got a great personality, which people like,
Absolutely. He's always struck me as a sort of player, Tony, that would do well in England, I think. He's sort of the traditional type centre forward in England. He can hold the ball up, he can get behind defenders, he's got some pace, he's a good strong runner as well, and he's good technically. For me, I've always sort of looked at him and thought he would do well in the UK. His style of football would be adaptable. I think for me, there's a sort of a generation of Australian footballers at the moment that they're a much of a muchness. They sort of, like he says, for me, there's a lot of midfielders coming through. The lightweight type midfielder, and they're good when things are going well and you're up 2-3-0. But when you need a player to roll their sleeves up, like Mitchell Duke can do really well, a good, strong, traditional centre forward. And do you think at some point in his career he might make the move to the UK?
Well, in saying that, his wife's actually English. So I know she's keen on moving back home. But obviously, if there's any suitors or clubs that are interested in talking to him, I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be something he'd reject and take it very seriously. But I know he wouldn't play League One. I know maybe Championship would be something he would want to play. But obviously, the clubs need to come knocking if they're interested.
Absolutely.
We can definitely open up some sort of conversation.
Absolutely, and having seen him play, he's just, for me, he'd suit the league over here. I mean, he can hold the ball up, he can do the basics really well. I suppose one way to sort of describe him to our listeners would be a traditional type centre forward, sort of in the mould of a Harry Kane type centre forward, where good technically, good strong runner, good technical player, and for me, one of the areas that has been wanting in modern day football is a centre forward that can hold the ball up. I think someone who can get forward and actually ball to feet and bring other players in. I think at the moment we're inundated with players who want to play that false number 9, drift around, and for me sometimes they're luxury players, Tony, that sort of false number 9 where they can sort of rove around unless you've got an abundance of ability to open doors, and that I think that no player's got the luxury of just drifting around. I think Mitch obviously is defensively too, he can get back, he's a hard worker, and for sure, absolutely, it'd be interesting to see how his career unfolds. And yourself, Tony, the Africa adventure, Sierra Leone, and I saw on social media that you're sort of getting more involved with the guys over in Africa, and that's a fascinating thing what you guys are doing, and obviously that's turning lives around. Can you tell us a bit how things are developing over in Africa at the moment?
Yeah, look, definitely. We're doing a lot of groundwork with the boys in Sierra Leone. But look, why I got involved was I've looked after a lot of African players in Australia, so I built a good connection with the community. So when I was asked about maybe doing the academy in Africa, I said, look, why not? There's good kids there. We can keep them off the street. We can get them playing the world game and enjoying themselves, right? And basically that's what it was all about. But it's gotten to a point where it's very serious at the moment, where they've got over 100 players at the moment down there. So God willing, I'll be heading over there in July to Sierra Leone to see the boys.
And what do you make of the standard so far out there, Tony? What are your thoughts on the actual standard itself? How would you compare it to other standards across the world?
Look, you watch the EPL, you watch the La Liga. There's a lot of African kids playing in the top teams, So you'd be stupid not to tap that market and go and have a look and see what they have. But look, for me, it's not more. It's more of keeping them off the street, giving them a sense of direction in life, and giving them hope. There's some of the kids there that they got no hope, mate, and we want to try and give them a hope to believe.
You say, Tony, that and I think for me, like you says, it's about the sort of global opportunity, but also what you guys are doing too goes beyond developing the players just on the field, it's also off the field too. It gives them a chance, and I've seen you sort of going out there, trying to get some investment for them to help them out as well, and that's important too. I think that sort of the important thing is helping them too from an educational point of view, facility point of view, and keeping them doing something. That's really important, I think, to keep them doing stuff. And what about Parramatta, Tony? How's things getting on there? I know you took that role on with Parra.
One lost two. So one of the games we lost, we should have won comfortably. Last week's game, I thought we were horrible, and I thought the players didn't show up. And I think they left their brains at home, some of the players. But you got to win being humble, and you got to lose being humble. That was the better team on the night. And there's no excuse to that.
Yeah, no, it's interesting stuff, Tony. Tony, just got a couple of. We'll sort of keep you on if you can sort of hang in there. I'm just going to bring Mel in as well. Mel Eves, our other guest as well. He played for Wolves, Huddersfield, Sheffield United, Gillingham, Mansfield, Walsall, to name a few teams. He actually played in the Wolves League Cup final in 1980 as well, and they beat Nottingham Forest, and that was the last time I believe Wolves won a cup competition. Obviously, they won promotion, they won the league last year. But we're going to get an insight into some of these thoughts on development as well, and what we can do, and we're going to sort of touch on another area too, Tony. I want to speak to you guys about too, which is an important area that I think football can really help with as well. Mel, welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Hi Jimmy, yeah, great to join you.
Fantastic. So I've got on the line as well Tony Basha, who's a colleague of mine. Mel, I've known him for many years. He's the director of the Australasian Soccer Academy, and he's also now the football director of Parramatta Football Academy too, and he's sort of been on a number of tours in the UK with his academy, and we're sort of having a chat about all things football. It's great to have you on board the show. I'm pleased to see how Wolves are getting on as well. It's they seem to be rolling along, and it'd be great to hear your thoughts on how you think they'll do going forward. But in terms of going forward, Mel, do you think it's possible for Wolves next year to make a serious push for the top four? I mean, the results against the top four this season have been really immense. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a case of we've got kind of what you would call a traditional top six at the moment, and they're way ahead of everybody else. But Wolves have got they can possibly break in and make it what I call a top seven, because and then obviously when you're in there you can challenge them for the top four, which is obviously the European places. So that ultimately is the Fosun Group, who are the new owners of Wolves, and that's their blueprint. They've got a 10-year plan, and they're ahead of schedule with the way that they're going. So who knows? But I think the first thing is to break into what you would call, not break into the top six, but make it a top seven or top eight. There are other teams that are trying to do that as well, and I think the more teams that are in there. I mean, we've already had Leicester that have broken the mould and won the Premier League, which was kind of astounding, and everybody thought it was impossible to do. But that's given everybody hope and belief that it can be done. And obviously to do it on a regular basis is the difficult thing, and that's what Leicester are finding out. And but yeah, people are knocking on the door, and Wolves are one of those. And so we'll just see how they progress. But they're making, it's been immense really what they've done this season. First of all, last season, making the Championship look so easy, which it isn't. It's one of the toughest leagues in the world to get out of, and then also the way that they've approached the Premier League with no fear, I think, is the big thing, and a belief in their own way of doing things, and it's paid dividends, Jimmy. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure if Tony's joining us from the other side of the world. He's on a different line. I don't know sort of if you caught that end of the conversation in terms of your thoughts on Wolves and the rise of Wolves. And I think for me it's important the manager obviously stays. That's for sure. It's going to be a big thing. But on another issue, and just to sort of catch, Tony, are you still with us, mate?
Yeah, mate. Yeah.
Another area, Mel, I was going to talk about, yep. And I'm going to sort of copy Tony in this one here. Tony being kind enough to join us. He's listening in from the other side of the world. He may not have sort of caught into the conversation, but I just want to sort of give my condolences to Tony. He signed a player he signed in the off season had been shot, I believe, in the media. And I think for me, I know this is important and sort of taking the conversation in a direction, but I think football for me is a big sport. It galvanises people. Likes of Tony's going out to Africa to help out there and do some work out there, which is a great thing. And I just want to offer my condolences, Tony, for the obviously what had happened there, going forward. But in terms of football, does it have a role to play, Tony, in with young people? Do you think? Your thoughts on that, and what do you think in regards football? Yeah.
Of course it does. I remember growing up, in the how can I say, in the streets of Parramatta, the hood we called it.
Yeah.
But mate, I know a lot of people that I always hung out with back at school. They never played football, never played sport. Mate, they're all in trouble. They're either in jail or they've got sorts of
yeah.
trouble. Like for me, sport kept me off the street, kept me disciplined, made me a team player, made me a better person at the end of the day. Like I try and educate parents these days to tell them, make sure you put your kids in sport. Even for obviously football's the one, because you play with all people from different backgrounds, different walks of life. You know what I mean? You make good friends, and as you know yourself, your best friends are your football friends. You might not see people for a long time. You bump into them down the street 10 years later, and you can stop and have a chat. It's like you have obviously a great platform to build better kids, in my opinion.
No, absolutely, and you sort of think back, and so obviously, Mel, we have our issues over here as well with young people and crime and so on and so forth. And I watched a documentary the other night. It was on the Beeb, I think, with Jermaine Genus, and he sort of looked around some of the areas in Nottingham and where crime's rising. And obviously, the show's about sport, but it was really, really poignant to think, and in terms of yourself, Mel, obviously back in the day, things were different to what they were now. But do you see sport as a vehicle to get young people engaged, Mel, in activities, and get them into doing some positive things? Do you see sport as an outlet yourself as well, or?
Absolutely, but we are human beings. Human beings are meant to move around, and we're given the ability to enjoy sport. We're given the ability to enjoy art, drama, anything creative. And I, like Tony, love football. I wasn't brilliant at all the other stuff at school, but I love to get out. I love my sport. I love my football, and I love my cricket in the summer. And I played all the other sports as well, whether it be basketball, tennis, badminton, whatever, athletics, whatever we could do. I just loved it. But that's just moving around, and human beings are built to move around. And the fact that in some schools, sport and everything isn't really on the curriculum, or you're not doing it anymore, or the sports field has been taken away because the school has sold it for a housing development, he's absolutely crazy. And that's why I founded over two or 3 years ago that, first of all, the Football Parents Alliance, which is now, we moved it 2 years ago to the Sports Parents Association, to bring in all sports, to guide parents and everybody associated with kids in sport to give them the right, what we would call environment for them to grow, to be the best version of themselves that they can be. And if sport is, and most kids love sport, and then also for kids that are creative, that love their drama, music, art. It's not all about just maths and English, which is what is rammed down everybody's throat in schools, of the education system. It's the system that's the problem, and there are a lot of brilliant people within the education system, within the sports system, that want to do the right things. And the big thing also is that when you're talking about the FA and everything, they do some great stuff, but the system that has been put into the academies and the football academies, it's all run by the education system has taken over, and it's all about turning out. We're turning out robots. We've got to turn out kids that are well-rounded, that love their sport, that don't fall out of love with the sport as well. So it's a matter of getting the balance right. I'm on the same page as Tony and yourself, Jimmy, because we've had many conversations, that sport is a massive outlet for kids, and the vast majority of kids. And some are going to be better than others, and will take their love of sport further. And there are going to be a few, such as myself. I was very blessed to be able to play it as a profession. And so I only have to get a proper job after I've finished my football career.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you made some really great points there. And similar to yourself, Tony, he's sort of pulled together a few initiatives as well over in Sydney to help young people too. But that's the sort of thing for me. I know these things are multifactorial. It's not just down to one thing. But the thing is that, obviously we know sport. I'd like to see some stats pulled up, really, but it makes a huge difference in communities, and it really is important. I think for me, funding is a huge thing. Now, I just want to bring Tony in shortly again. He's going to talk about his new state-of-the-art facility. Now, the issue for me is obviously funding is a big problem, and these state-of-the-art facilities are great, but generally speaking, they're quite exclusive and hard to use. So you've got people like yourself putting initiatives together, and that's what we're relying on, going forward. And people like Tony, who, through sheer hard work and determination, going out to get funding, private funding to set things up, and that's sort of getting kids off the street. Now, it's multifactorial. We know that it's not just down to getting people to play sports going to put an end to all things, but if you give someone something to channel their focus on, it goes a long way. So just Tony, on that facility that you sort of put together, can you give us some insight how that's going on? I mean, you sort of worked tirelessly, and I remember being out in Australia and speaking to you about that, and it was hard to get funding at the time, but through sheer dedication you got it together. How's it getting on, the new facility, Tony? Is it up and running now, or? I think we might have. Yeah, sorry, mate. Yeah, I was just saying, Tony, that I was speaking to Mel.
I heard what you said. Cut out here.
Yeah. We're talking
facility.
Yeah, I mean the facility that you put together through sheer hard work and determination, and Mel, similar to yourself, he's put together initiatives off his own back to help young people too, and parents. But the point being is that how hard was it for you to get the facility going? I mean, for me, it should be given that we should have investment through government and councils, but they're not always as forthcoming as they should be, at least in my opinion. Even though the stats are out there, give kids something to do, get them engaged, and it's through the goodwill of people like yourself going out there, campaigning and trying to get things together. But in terms of the facility, has it made a difference in the local community, the sports facility you've put together?
Exactly what you said in regards to the council and the government, but unfortunately I've been doing this for a long time. I've been looking after refugee kids for a long time who have come in new to the country, and not once have I ever got any help from the council nor the government. I pay for their uniforms, we give them free training, for Australian values, And in regards to facilitating these people or the academies, our facilities in Sydney are rubbish. That's been kind. We don't have. In one region we don't have any artificial pitches. So the problem we faced, and why I had to build this facility, was when it rains we don't have it. We have to cancel training. So there was one time we rained 2 weeks straight and we couldn't get on the parks because of the wet weather. So that's why we have to put our own hand in our pocket to make a difference for the community, for the kids, to give them somewhere they enjoy, but also we're paying out of our own pocket, where the government and the council should be helping out, which unfortunately they don't.
Absolutely, and that's a shame, because you've produced players like, certainly you've influenced players very heavily like Duke and many other players too, and the young lad now is on his way to Spain, and you'd think they'd see that and think, you know what, it's great stuff. But not only that, also for me, it's the communal feel too that you give as well, and you're getting families together, and I think it's really important, and it's really, really important in every area, but certainly areas that we had grown up in, where there is obviously stuff that goes on, and I think it's important. Sport, it just gets you on a straight and narrow, and I think that the more institutions you've got like that, the better chance you've got of getting kids off the street doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and they've got something to focus on. And and the good thing about yourself also, you encourage them to learn education, you encourage them to do stuff as well. You talked about values, you encourage them to adopt a set of values that are important to live in this world peacefully as much as one can do. That's sort of key. We all want the best for each other, really. And I think for me, the big thing about the academy is the family involvement. You've got the families involved, and it creates a communal feel. For some people, I think it's like an extension of their own immediate family, which is important stuff, which is key. But it's one of them, really. The argument's going to be there's only so much money available, and so on and so forth. And it's not an easy one. They're not easy solutions to complex problems. But I certainly think that there's enough data out there, there's enough stats out there to sort of back up the importance of young people communicating with other young people and bonding and being in an environment where you've got people like yourself and parents that are involved to help them. Because where they go from there, I mean, obviously, you want to keep the mind focused, and that's a big thing for me, keeping the mind focused. But on another note, Tony, so you got this weekend with football, just sort of before you go, I'm mindful of time, and who are you guys playing this weekend?
We're playing Western Mariners out in Bathurst, which is a 2.5 hour drive for us. So that's like probably going from Manchester to Leeds. How far is Leeds?
You're probably about an hour-ish, from here. Yeah, so probably about from here to Birmingham, I would think. Here to Wolverhampton. So I'm in Wolves. Yeah.
No, we've got a game this week. So we've actually had one of the players that was training with us, who was signed in the off-season, but succumbed to an injury. He was going to be signed in the next couple of weeks. Mate, he got shot and killed. It's pretty devastating.
Yeah, devastating news, Tony.
Yeah, it was all over the papers and the news.
Yeah. So
we don't know what happened. It's just a weird situation.
Devastating. That's absolutely devastating, and it's quite sad, obviously, for the family and all the people involved, and obviously the football club. And there's so many lives that are affected, and a young player, obviously a young lad with his future ahead of him. It's sad news. So I can imagine that it's going to be tough for you guys, but that you've been kind enough to come on board the show as well. I'm sure that it's had an impact on yourself too, Tony. So I want to thank you for coming on board the show, and my condolences on what's happened, and hopefully you guys on the weekend can I suppose have a bit of respite on the game. I mean, sometimes in times of difficult times, football can be not necessarily a distraction, but something to sort of put your mind on, and even if it's just for an hour or so, just rechannel our thoughts on something else going forward. So, my condolences once again. It's been great having you on the show, Tony, as always. We wish the young lad who makes his way to Spain all the best, and once again we'll keep in touch and hopefully speak to you soon. Thanks, Tony, for coming on board the show.
Thank you very much, guys, and have a good day.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, all the best, Tony.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, the difficult circumstances there. Tony sort of arranged to come on the show, and the sort of person he is, he sort of made sure he was going to be on the show. But it's tough times. It's tough times for him. Obviously, a played sign and was close to, tragically, his life was taken away. But there's not much, obviously, in the way of knowing what's happened there. But it's a tragedy, and we see it all too often. I think it's a global thing now, Mel. At the moment, I think that I don't know if it was any different when we were young and growing up. I don't know if it's the media. I don't know what it is, but certainly one thing's for sure, it's not good. And I suppose there's a transition, isn't there, Mel? I think in years gone by, I know it's a cliche, but if we had an issue, it'd generally be dealt with in the old-fashioned way, and you might, not that I'm condoning violence and getting into a fist fight, so to speak, but the point being is the times have changed, Mel. It's a sad indictment of the world we live in, where whether you're here across the other side of the world or anywhere for that matter, that we're seeing a new breed of violence, really, and that's a sad state of affairs, I think, definitely. Yeah,
but it is. Yeah, it's all a consequence of fear, which is bred by the immediate media, which have got an agenda, which again, a lot of the lack of funding for various things is all politically driven. They can find trillions of pounds to get a nuclear missile, which probably don't use, but they can't find a few £1,000s to fund really good inner city projects and what have you. It's absolutely crazy, but I think there is an agenda, and we won't harbour too much on that, but all I'm saying is that it's a good job that there are a lot of wonderful people like Tony about, and your good self. We all try and do our bit to empower the kids, to empower everybody to enjoy their sport, enjoy whether it be football or whatever. But we all love our football, and it's a massive thing for communities, and it's such a thing that pulls everybody in communities together, and they get behind their football clubs. The football clubs in communities have such an effect, and the ones that do it really well there's so much rewards other than any money, or other than how well the football club itself is doing or the first team is doing. The impact that the football has in galvanising and the work it does within the community. I'm sure that's the same in Manchester with United and City.
Absolutely.
I know that I was at Burnley on Saturday for Burnley v Wolves. I was doing the radio there, and Burnley is a pretty self-contained place and whatever. But I know that Burnley Football Club has such a big impact on the community there, and same in Wolves. Wolves are spreading out, and obviously they're getting worldwide recognition now, Wolves, as a football club. But the work that they do locally is the most important thing. And all football clubs and the owners of football clubs have a massive responsibility, and in understanding that it's not just it's not just a gamble on can we make some money on this owning a football club and then eventually selling it to somebody else. It's a case of you've got an awesome responsibility as the custodians of a community, really, a community-based entity that is there to bring everybody together.
Absolutely.
And they do so much. And we have to, I think clubs and the people that come into clubs on a temporary basis, whether it be owners, managing directors, CEOs, and what have you, have got to understand. The good ones understand that and do very well. But there are some that are what you would call the career people or whatever that just see the bottom line, the pound, shillings and pence, and then they don't actually understand about the impact that the club has on the community.
Exactly. It's an absolute shame. I think that it's not good. It's not what we want in the game, and I think that obviously it is a business now, the game. Well aware of that, but I think that there's got to be a line drawn, and I've mentioned before.
So that's the balance.
Absolutely.
Right.
I've mentioned before that when you sort of in a town centre on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday, and the team's playing, there's no better buzz anywhere in the world. Seriously, if you sort of, whether it's a League 1, 2 or Championship club, Premier League club, it's just phenomenal. It's, that sort of buzz you get on match day in and around town centres, and people talking football and rubbing shoulders, and that's what it's all about. It's all about the fans. And what's quite interesting, Mel, an interesting one I want to sort of put forward too is that, I mean, you were involved in a League Cup final against Nottingham Forest. You guys won against the Nottingham Forest team at the time that were
European champions.
Precisely, phenomenal, team. But interesting, really. Aside from obviously that would have been an amazing experience and everything else. But if you look back and think, okay, Nottingham Forest, European Championship, they'd won European League, which you could argue back then was probably even more difficult to win in some ways because you had to win the league. These days you can finish 12th these days and qualify.
They won the old first division, which is the Premier League now, and then it was the European Cup then, as opposed to there wasn't a mini league, and then it goes into a cup competition after the first bit.
Exactly.
You have to win every.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, obviously these days you can finish, fourth and still qualify. But the point being, it's interesting how the plights of two teams, and you kind of look at Nottingham Forest now and Wolves now, and obviously there's been a lot of twists and turns in between 1980 and now. But in your own thoughts, I mean, Nottingham Forest from European Cup winners and won the league, and what are some of thoughts? Obviously, you're interested in Wolves, but from a sort of outside perspective, looking at it from your perspective, what do you think has happened to Wolves, Mel? I mean, they're in the Championship.
Well, I can tell you very simply that they've gone through various phases. From when I was there, all we needed was the ownership of the club to be right and the right investment put in. Not massive investment, but the right investment put in. It wasn't. It was the owners weren't right. The club went into liquidation in '82. It then went again in '86. It then went from in '84, got relegated. That's when I ruptured my Achilles and then finished at Wolves. But then from '84 to '85, '86, '87, they went down from Division 1, which is the Premier League now, all the way through to Division 1, 2, 3, 4, and nearly went out the league into the conference and into what you would class as non-league football then.
Wow, yeah.
And you're thinking, and a club as big as Wolves, who were the biggest thing on the planet virtually, along with Man United in the 50s, then suddenly disintegrate and nearly go out of existence in the 80s. And then it's taken sometimes decades to get it back. We've had Sir Jack Hayward was brilliant in settling things down, getting the team back on an even keel. But then even he couldn't put the investment in to get them to the next level, which was to get themselves in the Premier League and an established Premier League club.
Yeah. Then
it's taken eventually through Steve Morgan, who did okay, just stabilise it. And then he's sold it to the Fosun group, who were really they're really serious about taking it back to where Wolves were in the 50s, and they've stated that, and they've got a 10-year plan to do it, and they're probably a year or two ahead of schedule at the moment. And so, from going back, any other clubs like Nottingham Forest that have been brilliant in the past, the real reason that they're not where they are where they were is because they've never got it right from the top. Aston Villa's a prime example, another team near us. You've got to get the ownership right, you've got to get the investment right, then you've got to get everybody singing off the same hymn sheet, you've got to get everybody aligned, you've got to get the recruitment right, you've got to get the manager right, everything else right, that the academy is run in the right way that aligns with the values of the whole club and the senior teams. There's lots of things that go into it.
Absolutely.
And we've seen that, you've seen that with as soon as Sir Alex Ferguson, as dynasty kind of finished, Man United have had problems getting back to where they believe they should be.
They've got problems beating Wolves at the moment, no.
Well, that's right. I mean, as you say, Wolves are a little bit of a bogey turn for United at the moment, but that's where it can happen. I mean, look, Wolves have had the double done over them by Huddersfield.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Huddersfield have won 3 games all season.
Exactly.
And they've beaten Wolves twice. Now, football's crazy. It doesn't make sense.
I think that's a testimony, I think, Mel, to the Premier League. I mean, that's not going to happen in too many leagues around the world. And for me, the Premier League is the best spectacle. I mean, I watch the other European leagues too, and you know, I sort of go out to other games in and around Europe every now and again. But for me, the Premier League is a spectacle. Irrespective of what people say, technical ability. I mean, you look at the teams that have qualified for the lower stages of European tournaments. They're very heavily populated with the English teams, and I think for me, the Premier League is just phenomenal league. And I mean, where do you get that?
Well, it's a world league, isn't it, Jimmy? No,
absolutely. I mean, it's like a few years ago. You look back at Leicester. We spoke about them before, and you wouldn't have that in any other established league anywhere. Where a team can do that. But I suppose the interesting thing is, Mel, with Wolves now, is obviously they're on the brink of sort of obviously they won the league last year, but they're on the brink of winning domestic trophies again. But you guys playing against, say, Nottingham Forest, an interesting one for me. Just I suppose the listeners will probably be curious. So there'll be a lot of listeners who probably saw the game, or at least can recollect the game, and at least can appreciate how strong Nottingham Forest were. I mean, you look at a team like Nottingham Forest and think to yourself, do you believe wholeheartedly, Mel, you can win the game? I mean, obviously, I know you're a winner and you're not going to go into any game for believing, but the truth...
The thing is, that season, 79-80, we finished 6th in the first division, which is like finishing 6th in the Premier League now. We did the double over Manchester United. the only team to win at Old Trafford all season, which denied United at the time winning the league because Liverpool picked them by 2 points, and it was very, very close. In fact, if our home record had been a little bit better, we would have challenged to win the league that season. Forest finished 5th, 1 point above us. So it wasn't a David and Goliath situation.
You're there in the past.
We were always there and thereabouts. Although obviously Forest were favourites at the time, we weren't total outsiders, put it that way.
No, exactly.
And we went there believing that we could win the game.
Yeah, and I think for me it's a bit like the Wolves team now. That you watch the team and they're not overawed. I mean, obviously you've watched them play a lot more than me, Mel. But in the games I've seen them play, they just don't look overawed against anybody. It's like they'll turn up against a Chelsea or a United or a City and just go toe to toe. They're going to play their game irrespective of who the opposition is, and that's incredible stuff. I really think that that the way they approach every game with that belief that they can win the game is immense. To be fair, the style of football they play too, it's phenomenal to see them do that. And is that something you think the managers instilled in the players, where you should instill that in the players to go out there and play without fear and just not give the opposition too much respect to the point where you're overawed by who you're playing.
Yeah, I think you just made a great point. Yes, I do believe it is totally and utterly down to the philosophy of Nuno Espirito Santo. He has come in and said, this is how we're going to play. He's instilled belief into the players that if you play this way, you will be successful. He's given them the platform and the environment and to express themselves within a very structured process of, this is what we do when we haven't got the ball, this is how everybody defends, this is how we work as a team, and this is how we work as a team when we've got the ball. So, because unless you make, and this isn't down to systems win you nothing. Systems per se, to say, well, oh no, 4-4-2's out the window now, or you've got to play 4-3-3, or you've got to play 4-3-1-2, or whatever, or 3-5-2. Look, whatever the players are set up, what I'm talking about is as long as everybody understands what they're doing, both in every aspect of the game, and then you get the best players that you can for each position, and that's where your recruitment comes in. You then get the players, give them the environment to actually perform to their best ability, the best version of themselves they can be. That's the manager's job, that's the coach's job, that's everybody around them who prepares the players and works with the players. And then you've got a great chance. You heighten the chance. All the manager can do, and I judge managers on how they do compared to the what they've got to work with.
Yeah,
if you've got more resources and you finish mid-table, you probably underperform. If you've got no resources whatsoever and should really finish last, and you finish mid-table, you should get manager of the year every time.
Absolutely.
So, and that's how I judge. Simple as that. So
absolutely, you exactly. I think so too. I think that's a great point you've made there. And you kind of think, well, certain managers, how would they do at certain clubs? And what I'm referring to there is, say, you could take, a Pep Guardiola. No disrespect to Pep, he's done a phenomenal job at City. He's a great manager, done a great job wherever he's been. But if you put him in, say, at a Burnley, how does he do? And if you take a Sean Dyche and put him in a City, how does he do? And that's sort of interesting things for me. Sometimes you think to yourself, okay, is it sort of worth sometimes giving a young manager a chance to work their way through the league? Sometimes I think it's like the England job, for example. The temptation could have been to go abroad again, but they said no, we'll go with Southgate. He's a young English manager, give him a chance, and he's he's exceeded anyone's expectations at the moment. I mean, he's sort of got the team playing some great football, and the lads obviously love playing for him too. And it's a sort of case where get a balance of both, I think, Mel. That's the sort of key, isn't it? Sort of to get a blend of coaching staff that know the league as well, but also, it's the best person for the job as well, irrespective of what the situation is. I think that's the key. But the point being is that, you can only manage with what you've got, and underachieving it's tough in the Premier League too, Mel, because a lot of teams have got resources now, and there's not a big margin anymore, I think, as big as it used to be in terms of any given day. You go to Southampton and you're going to be in for a tough game. You can, like you said, Huddersfield got a result against Wolves, and do you think that the Premier League is a tough league to get wins? It's not easy league to get results week in, week out.
No, absolutely, and every team will be very well organised now, and you can't underestimate anybody. And on any given day, as you say, unlike some leagues in the world, you can never guarantee results. Simple as that. There's no guarantees, and that's why I think that the Premier League is watched by millions probably billions each week. It's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Absolutely. I've got to admit, Mel, I hold my hands up when Wolves appointed Nuno. I thought, okay, this could go either way. I didn't know a great deal about him, but obviously,
like me, Jimmy, I didn't know anything about him at all.
Yeah. I mean, I thought once his recruitment strategy involved getting some players in, young players in from Portugal, I thought, okay, these lads, they might play well, in the summer months and spring, but come December, January, when you've got to roll your sleeves up in the championship, which they were then, they might struggle. I went down to watch Wolves. We caught up on that occasion, and I was pleasantly surprised. I thought, goodness me, these guys, they're up for it. They're up for a fight, and they play some football, and they've not let up since then, really. So in a way, I was quite pleasantly surprised. I thought, this could go either way, but what really surprised me is these players. I shouldn't say surprised me. Obviously, professionals are professionals, but we have seen players in certain situations, do well under certain conditions and when things are going well.
Yeah.
But these lads, they're up for the fight, definitely.
Yes, I think there was a kind of a stereotypical kind of. Either Latin player or kind of Southern European player that just when the sun's on their back they'll look terrific, but when it gets a bit cold, a damp night at Accrington Stanley on a Tuesday night and it's throwing it down and freezing, they're not going to turn up. And I think fortunately the guys at Wolves have dispelled that myth. And even the supporters sing jokingly that they're not very good in the winter. I won't say exactly what they're singing, but but they actually take the mickey out of the team, saying they're probably 2 or 3-0 up, and they're saying we're rubbish in the winter.
Yeah, no, exactly, and that's the sort of it's interesting thing, and I think that it's one of them really. I think that it's not only about the winter, it's also young players away from their families and so on and so forth, and they've got to adjust to a new culture, new environment, and it goes the other way too. Players from England as well hesitate to move to leagues across the world too, for obvious reasons, family, and you're settled, and why would you move, and that sort of thing. But I think for me it'd be great to see some younger English players playing in Spain and Germany, Italy, just to sort of get that taste of what it's like to play abroad and enhance their careers. We've seen Sancho do it to good effect. I think it wouldn't do any harm, but the argument is obviously if you're sort of getting first team football here, there's no need to go anywhere. But I do think there's the players that are playing for Wolves that have come in, they've also enhanced their careers too, and they play a different style of football, and they've adapted really, really well. But that's recruitment, I think. If you've got a good recruitment policy, then you're on the way. And I think, like you mentioned before, systems are one thing, but the bottom line is your recruitment is key. A huge thing of the game, big one. And for me, one thing that I used to think of when I used to work in the lower leagues, Mel, I was always hesitant to bring in players on loan from the bigger clubs. I'd always say to the manager, we want to get players who want to play, because I used to think to myself, you get a player on loan from, say, a Premiership club, no disrespect to United or City, I'm sure that the players will give their best, but it's a whole different environment. At least back then it was. A bit different now, the facilities have changed, even in the lower leagues, but back then the facilities, like from going from Carrington to training in a field, somewhere, it's a big transition. And I used to always think to the manager, say, maybe want to get players who are on the way up from a championship team who are just narrowly missing out on playing first team football who are up for it. So there's things to take in consideration there, that's for sure, which is key. But we're on the brink, Wolves on the brink, Mel, of winning trophies again in top flight, and it's a great time to be a Wolves fan, that's for sure.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. I mean, big game for the club, great occasion on Sunday, the semi-final of the FA Cup. It's again, that'll be a really tough test. I think it could go either way. I really do, because Watford are having a great season as well, and they're doing really well. So I think and Watford came to Wolves earlier in the season and actually were one of the best teams that we've seen. They beat Wolves 2-0 and fully deserved it. So Wolves have made a few little adjustments since then, so we'll see. But
I think that
it's just a great occasion, and however it goes, and whatever happens for the rest of the season, the next 6 weeks or so, it's been a great season for Wolves, and it's put Wolves on the map, put the Wolves and set them up for the future. Whatever.
Absolutely.
I think anything that happens from now on is just, it's all bonus. It's all a bonus.
It is. I think sometimes it's easy as a fan to forget how far you've come in a short time, and I think one thing's for sure: in the next 2, 3 years, 5 years, all things being well, we know football can change pretty quick. But all things being well, and I see no reason why they're going to change too dramatically, only for the better, really. The club's stable. It's got. Like you mentioned earlier, things are working well on every level. In the next few years, we should see trophies at Wolves, that's for sure. Of every optimism for them to win stuff. There's obviously a good feel-good factor, and getting things right off the pitch are equally as important, if not more important, than on the pitch too. Mel, it's been great having you on the show. The hour's flown by. It's been great speaking to you again. No doubt we'll speak to you again at some point again before the end of the season, but we wish you all the best, Mel. Thanks for joining us once again.
Always a pleasure, Jimmy. Thanks very much.
All the best. Bye.
Cheers.
And that was Mel Eves there. You could call him a Wolves legend. That was the club that he played most of his football and scored, I think, 53 goals at, and won a cup for them. And we also had Tony Basha on the show, who was kind enough to join us under tough circumstances. Obviously, it was a difficult week been a difficult week for Tony with one of the players that he signed for his club. Tragically, don't know the circumstances of it, but it been shot, I believe. That's at least according to media sources anyway. So sad news there. But it's been a great show this evening. We've sort of spoke a lot about football development, and it's great to bring the people of Salford an insight into international sport as well as local sport too. We do back local sport up, and we do make a conscious effort to get the local people involved on the show, and we do cover as much as we can. But it's also great to get international feel to the show too. So once again, it's been great to present you the show this evening. Do join us again, same time, same place next week on the Friday Sports Show with Jimmy Petruzzi. Have a great weekend. Thank you.